Welcome back to the Recap Show. On today's episode, we will be talking about the Olympics, the next face of the U.S. Women's National Team, and we will be joined by co-founder of Angel City, Kara Nortman. But first, let's get into the daily discussion.
Hello, Reimaginers, and welcome back to the Recap Show. We are so excited to be here. Today's daily discussion, we are going to be gearing up for France 2024. It is almost time to be cheering on Team USA, and we can't wait. Tobin, what are you excited about for this Olympics?
Well, I love that you said France 2024 because I think most people would know it as Paris 2024. But the reality is for the U.S. Women's National Team, it is actually France 2024 because, fun facts about the Olympics, the U.S. Women's National Team will not go to Paris until I think one of the semifinals is there and obviously the final is there. So I think you kind of said it correct for
my specific lens.
Your specific lens. But we are gearing up for the Paris Olympics.
Okay.
One of my favorite things about like the uniqueness of this World Championship is actually like the jerseys. So like we just saw the U.S. Women's National Team in their send-off games. You're wearing the crest with the stars over them. But for the Olympics, what you'll see is actually a jersey that doesn't have a crest. It's not the U.S. Soccer Federation. It is Team USA. Mm-hmm. Therefore, instead of the crest, you will see a jersey that just says USA. And that is just an indication of being part of a bigger team.
Yes. Bigger
than the U.S. Women's National Team. You are part of Team USA, and it kind of like immediately like reframes like what you're there for, what you're there to win, and you're there to win a medal for Team USA.
Great point. Just the like feeling of when you put on your Team USA stuff, it's much cleaner.
Oh yeah.
It looks kind of sleek, but it gives me the ick feeling because one, there's only 18 numbers. So I always had to change my number. Yep. So anyone who's over 18 in soccer hates this.
Yeah.
And two, I did not have great Olympics. So, I don't have very many good memories from either of those tournaments. I was more of a World Cup gal.
You know what? I think some would be happy with being more of a World Cup gal. There is awkwardness to the Olympics. Let's just get out the awkwardness. Okay. So, for instance, and many people will kind of like catch on to this. So, as I mentioned, the U.S. Women's National Team is not currently in Paris. I think they're somewhere in the south of France. They will represent, like, what's actually cool about Olympic soccer is it gives the country of the host city an opportunity to feel a part of the Olympics. So all of these awesome cities in France that have, beautiful stadiums, football-specific stadiums, will get Olympic Games. And you go about the country and you feel like you're on the outskirts of the Olympics. You're kind of like not even thought about until there's an opportunity to win a medal. But what it feels like, and each Olympics is different depending on the host country, the host city. But like what it feels like is these stadiums, like they're kind of in the beginning, especially the group stages, they're kind of like lacking that energy of a world championship, especially for, these first timers that just played in a World Cup where all of the attention, all of the marketing, all of the news is about the U.S. Women's National Team. All of a sudden, you are in obscurity for the beginning of this. You do not even walk in the opening ceremonies. You watch the opening ceremonies just like everyone at home.
Okay, but not like everyone at home.
You're right.
Because you have your opening ceremony outfit. And generally, the U.S. national team at least would all put on their opening ceremonies outfit in the hotel and walk around the hallway.
Yes, we have a very, very strange opening ceremony. We do get all of the gear, that's for sure. And we do these weird things to feel a part of the Olympics, but we're not. And what's actually funny is that we actually always start our tournament before the opening ceremony. So we open before the opening ceremony. So already like there's this awkwardness to us at the Olympics compared to what we feel in a World Cup.
Yeah, and so you're sort of staying in the outskirts of the tournament in these hotels, and you're often staying with other soccer teams, men's and women's, which brings to the kind of the other awkward part that it's U23 for men.
Yes. That's another question that is always asked. Why is it U23 for men? Why is it then the first and senior team for women? There's a lot of like gender equity conversation that can go into this, but it is a very complicated it's complicated. People always ask about it. They're like,
it's bizarre.
Yes, it's extremely bizarre, but it is an opportunity, a world championship for the women on the world stage, and it's very exciting. As most people know, it's a smaller tournament than the World Cup. There are not as many teams in it. Therefore, there are not as many games. The World Cup, 7 games to the final. The Olympics, 6 games. Quicker turnarounds. In the group stage, there are the 2 best teams in the group go through. There's also then 2 third-place teams. So what I would say for this tournament, the most important thing for the USWNT team is this first game. You win the first game, you really put yourself in the driver's seat for basically getting into the next round of the Olympics.
Quicker turnaround, less matches. Actually, I used to say that's better suited for the U.S. because we're always the fittest team.
Yes.
I don't know if that's true anymore. While we're just like venting out all the things like that are weird about the Olympics, I know this isn't universal, but I'm going to go ahead and say the last Olympics was the COVID Olympics,
yes,
which everyone remembers. No fans, really bizarre. We were in isolation. But the Olympics before was Zika. Do you remember that? They were chanting Zika in every stadium.
Not only were the stadiums, like, I will say there is benefit for France and Paris, like this being the host country, because it's a small country. So you're going to feel kind of the energy, like kind of like permeating through the country coming out of Paris. But when we were in Brazil,
huge country,
you were going to the middle. We were going to the middle of the jungle. We were in Manaus.
We had some sort of big cat living in our hotel with us.
Oh yeah, there were animals, and we also were given blankets because there was so much moisture, because it was the most humid place on the planet, that we were given blankets that, like, because they were just going to be wet in the morning. Like, it was
they were like towels.
They were towels. They weren't blankets. We were sleeping with towels. And well, that is a great example of a time where the U.S. Women's National Team, we lost in the quarterfinals. It felt like we didn't even play in an Olympics.
Never made it to Rio.
Not only did we not experience the opening ceremonies, which we already know that's a thing, but we did not even experience Rio. We didn't experience the closing ceremonies. So we literally went to the Rio Olympics and we did not go to Rio. It's just complicated. So
I love how fired up you get about things that you don't like. I do believe my question was, what are you looking forward to about the Olympics? And then we just spent half the daily discussion venting about all the things that we don't like.
I did say I like the fact that the Olympics is in France, because I do feel like they will have more energy than when you play Olympic football in countries that are bigger.
Well, I also saw in Architectural Digest some of the venues for Paris, and they're going to be beautiful, stunning, and incredible.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
And then, yes, so this is very exciting. Now, I would also like to point out, and I don't know if I've said this out loud to you, that...
I don't like when you say things first time on the show.
Exactly. That this could be, well, knock on wood, it's not. But the U.S. Women's National Team has won at least one of the world championships in every cycle that it's played in. And we've talked about this at length, that there has always seemed like the U.S. Women's National Team has won everything. But that is not the case. But the U.S. Women's National Team has won one of the world championships out of the last 15 years in a cycle.
Whoa. So either an Olympics or a World Cup every year out of every 4 years.
Exactly. So although, for instance, between 99 and 15, there was no World Cup that we won. We won the Olympics in 2008 and 2012. Same goes for the World Cups. Although we didn't win Olympics in 16 or in 2020, 2021, we won World Cups.
Whoa.
So this is a good omen, but could also be a little scary in terms of the pressure of what it means to represent the US Women's National Team and to be a winning team, a winning generation for the US Women's National Team, because we know that the team did not win the World Cup, but they have a really amazing opportunity to actually get back on track where US Women's National Teams have always been. You win the Olympics now. It rights all the wrongs.
It sure does. That stat is blowing my mind because I just thought that we were the golden generation that had just outperformed any U.S. Women's National Team before us. But really,
well,
yeah, you don't like taking
winning
our crown.
World Cups. Nobody wins back-to-back World Cups.
Okay, fine. Golden generation it is.
We talked about how hard that.
Yes. Okay, so tournament is right around the corner. What are you excited about watching this U.S. Women's National Team? What is our strengths? What do we have to bring to the table to win?
Yeah, look, we are all wondering, and we've been wondering, like, who is this U.S. Women's National Team? I think we kind of went through a generational shift, and like some things happened quicker than others, but it's been very slow. And I think we kind of saw that last piece kind of fall from the last generation when, obviously Alex not being a part of this team, which I think a lot of people would have thought that she would be a part of this team. But I think it gives, again, a major opportunity for a star is born, like I very much felt and think Sophia Smith for me is, right now our out and out 9. I think that in the last World Cup, she was very much set up like she was supposed to be kind of the it girl of that last World Cup. But she wasn't fully invested in terms of playing her true position. I don't think she had the full buy-in of the team, of the coach. Alex was still there. She was kind of living in the shadow. Obviously very different types of players. I felt like there was enormous pressure for her in that World Cup. And look, nobody performed in the World Cup. And certainly no kind of new standout performer was born out of that.
Well, it's interesting because you're talking about the face of the team,
yes.
And that's a role and that's a responsibility, right? So you're talking about a player that not only has to perform and be outstanding and generally score goals, but also has to really represent the team off the field. And it's the person who gets all the sponsorships. It's the person that does all the press conferences. And there's kind of a plight to that. And then there's obviously a lot of economic upside and stardom and fame. And so it's, there's good and bad and ugly. And Alex not being on the roster is a very interesting place for the team because, if you think of the U.S. Women's National Team history, you've got Mia, Abby, Alex, and all of these players really bled into each other. And before the player rolled off, the next one had already emerged. But what you're saying with the last World Cup performance being so poor and without any of the players really having that big moment, there's kind of this vacancy, and it's a huge opportunity looking into this tournament. Who's going to rise to the occasion? And I always think about when you say face the team, I think, you got to be a great player, of course, but there's so much more that goes into that that's external in terms of marketing and marketability and, prejudice and bias and all of the power dynamics at play. But in this case, I really haven't seen the outside world dictate who that player is. Even before the World Cup, there was a ton of Sophia Smith commercials and such, but I think it's been a little bit more of an open field as we enter the tournament.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's kind of like the perfect storm of things happening, right? It's that marketability, but there's also the performance, and then there's doing it in a big moment. So you score a goal in a group stage, okay. But you score a goal every group stage, okay. The team gets to the semifinal, you score. The team gets to the final, you score. That is that's performance, right? And then obviously, can you do that over 10 years? Can you put that pressure on your back? And I guess we've always had that. I think our country craves having a superstar. We don't have teams where everybody's just kind of good and some players will kind of be better at some point than others. No, our country is born on sports superstars. And right now, that's up for the taking, in my opinion. Like, our superstar could be made. Is there a possibility that it doesn't happen? Like, is that an option for this team?
Well, if they don't win. Yeah. That's the question. It's like, you know, how well does the team have to do to get the whole country behind them? Because, you know, like we talked about from the beginning, it's not the World Cup. There's a lot of sporting events going on, right? Yeah. And so there's competition of where people are going to be viewing. And it's not until you get late in the tournament that everybody turns it on.
Yeah.
And so, of course, you like look back and you see all the stats and you know who's scoring. But really, I think a big part of this creation of a star comes from winning.
Yeah, it's so true. And, you know, you just reminded me of something I saw recently, which was Bonmati from Spain has just been given like a signature boot from Adidas. Yeah. And that was the first time I've seen a player outside the US be more marketable than any US player that I've seen going into a world championship. And that's because not only is she the best player in the world currently, but she's the best player in the world currently because she's a part of a winning team. Like, you can't be the best player in the world without a winning team.
Well, that's also kind of what you were talking about, making these like big moments. When I think about Alex's big moments were 2011 and 2012. What happened after that is she was the face of the team on the team that won.
Yes, exactly.
And so, like, winning is the most important ingredient. We always talk about this.
Yeah.
Like, we all have our egos. We all have our like personal goals. We all have these dreams, and world championships are the greatest reminder that the collective dream of winning is more important than any individual. And so in a lot of ways, you must win.
Yep.
And then basically whoever has stepped up in the biggest way gets to have the honor of carrying that torch forward.
Yeah. And I guess that's my question to the group. Like,
what group?
To the USWNT team group.
To the team, got it.
No, to our group here. Is this a team that leaves their egos at the door and goes into a world championship and says, you know what, whoever may end up as that person, doesn't matter. What matters is this team ends up on that podium with the gold medal.
Yeah.
Whatever may be.
I think that's learned, right? Like, I didn't go into 2015 going, whatever may be, right? Like, I went in being like, I'm going to have a breakout World Cup and I'm going to be the best player.
Yeah.
But it's learned.
Yeah.
And it's created. And I think it actually happens in crazy games.
Yeah.
If you think of like all the tournaments that we've won, like there's always like a crazy game.
Yeah.
Like there's a game where you're like, what? Like that couldn't have happened.
Totally.
And it breaks down the ego. And like all of a sudden you're just like, whatever I have to do, I'm strapping on my armor and I'm just like getting through this tournament.
Yeah.
And then whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
So I think we'll be able to watch that energy as the team goes through the tournament, and we'll be able to smell it, you and I, from the couch. But one thing I'm excited right now, which is really interesting when we talk about like who's going to be the standout, is in the lead up to this tournament, I think the dynamic between Mal and Soph has been really strong.
Yes.
There's been really good interplay. They've looked really energized. They're connecting. They're finding each other. I know there's, of course, a lot of heavy criticism on not putting the ball in the back of the net consistently enough. But it's actually the first time in a long time that I've seen a duo.
Yeah, dynamic duo.
A duo on the U.S. Women's National Team play off each other. And that does take an egolessness to have a two front that really complements each other and like, uplifts each other. So
it's funny. I actually think the most egolessness position like has to be a Trinity Rodman in her position. Because I think like you said, there's a main show and there's a side show, and there's always been that of the U.S. Women's National Team. And I would always say the side show is way more important than the main show of the U.S. Women's National Team's success.
I don't really see Trinity as a sideshow and just her general like personality.
No, definitely not. And I think that's like the emergence of this generation, you know, like this generation is born off their brands, you know, like that was not anything. I was trying to think, like the last Olympics that I was a spectator, that I watched it, was 2004. Was there even cell phones in 2004? Like that was the last time I watched the Olympics. Like I'm pretty sure there was definitely not streaming. So like it was like I was turning on primetime, watching the Olympics, like in my family's home. Like that's the last time I was a spectator. Like
That's a long time
I'm
ago.
just trying to think like now what the Olympics is, how we even like consume it. It's so different. And now this generation of players so different, you know, like what is that new like identity of team and of players is fascinating to me.
I know. And I think like what makes somebody willing to be the facilitator, right? And so you're saying like, oh, if Mal and Soph are creating most of the chances and they're getting in front of goal, that makes Trinity's role a facilitator. And you know, I don't see that when I like see her play and I see her style.
Yeah, no, not
but
certainly.
I think a lot of people would maybe say that about you. You're not a sideshow either, and you did a lot of facilitating on that team.
I mean, the truth is, and it was funny because Diana Taurasi kind of said this about Team USA for basketball, is like there is like being part of an Olympic team. I think a World Championship, a World Cup team is the same. It's like what you are in one environment, like you can't be in the national team. So all of these players, they're the best, especially the attacking players. They're all the go-to person on their team, you know? And we could say that hasn't been the case for, you know, in our generation. Maybe it wasn't the case. Maybe it was the case. But like, I think that like that's the balance that Emma has to strike. And that's the type of like how she has to motivate this team to be a team.
You know what? You're so right. I'm like making it sound so hard, but like I played a completely different role in the national team that I did in club, and like it was fine.
But you like anybody would have so much like you have so much humility of being like part of the USWNT team, like because your whole existence, I feel like as like a footballer to the highest extent are these moments. Like it's not about club, like as much as I love club football, like I love those competitions, like these are the moments that matter. Like Messi like would not even be considered the best player in the world unless he had won a World Cup. And that was like, now we can actually like talk about him as the best player ever because he won a World Cup. Like, I'm sorry, if he doesn't win a World Cup, he's not in that conversation.
Absolutely.
You know? So like these are my favorite moments. I'm really looking forward to the tournament. But I will say, going into the tournament, you know who I think the star of the tournament is?
Ooh, can't wait. Hot take.
It's Emma Hayes. I mean, if anybody's taking the microphone and saying, here we go, Team USA, let's go, like, it's Emma Hayes. Like, I don't see anybody else on the US Women's National Team with the swagger that Emma Hayes has.
Okay, well, how does that make you feel?
It will make me feel great if the team wins.
All right. I mean, I am so excited to watch the team play because actually I have a really hard time watching friendly games because as a player, you sort of know the politics and dynamics of like what it takes to build a team that's going to win when it matters. And you know, and like I either want to see the like tactics board and like hear the pregame talk and then I could watch a friendly game, or like I don't want to watch it all because I'm like, we're not really seeing what we're seeing.
Yeah.
And so I am so excited to watch this team play.
Yes.
On their very first game. It's going to be super exciting.
Yes.
And it feels like out of nowhere we just hit a switch and here we are. The Olympics are here.
Yep. I 100% agree. And I feel like if there's any red flag, or yellow flag, whatever, if there's any warning that like sign, anything I'm a little unsure about is actually just the depth of the team. And I don't mean that because there's not incredible depth of talent. Like I will never say that against the US Women's National Team, but depth in terms of experience for this moment, I look at a strong starting 11. Like I think we have a strong starting 11. I think we got a little bit weaker with, Kat kind of not being able to participate because of her injury. But I think we have a really strong 11. And I think they know, like they've been playing well together. They're gelling. Like I see like really good partnerships for the first time.
A little bit of a buzz to them too.
A little bit of buzz. Yeah. Like a little bit of like, let's go, like on their front foot. But the depth, like this tournament requires depth. Like it requires it.
Why is that?
because of the quicker turnaround, because of the format. I will say, though, again, because the country's smaller, recovery's easier. When you're going to go from city to city, you're not getting on like a massive 6-hour plane ride. Like, you have to take that into account. Like, recovery's quicker.
Yeah, but also because there's an 18-person roster.
An 18-person roster, yeah.
So it's harder to do your rotations throughout the tournament.
Yes, like this 11, they will not be able to put out the same 11 every single game as much as you're going to want to, which is why, again, winning the first game is essential because it gives you the ability in a tournament like this to potentially rest.
Yep.
And when I look at the first 11, I think, I can't wait to watch them play. When I think about the depth that's needed in a tournament like the Olympics and kind of the lack, I would say, of experience, that's where I get like a little bit like, oof, what comes after? Who comes in? What comes after?
Mm-hmm.
How do we win? Because we all know you don't win these tournaments with the first 11. You don't win these tournaments in the first half. You win them on two things. You win them with the totality of the team, and you win them with an exceptional defense.
Oh, I thought you were going to say set pieces.
I've given up on set pieces. This team is not going to score set pieces.
Oh my gosh, really hot take. Well, you know what? I hope that they score massive amounts of goals. I hope Lindsay's big ol' head gets on the ball, puts it in the back of the net, and you're eating your words. And I am making fun of you every week here in the daily discussion about your poor prediction because the U.S. Women's National Team is the best team in the world at set pieces again.
Make me eat my words, please. Contrary to popular belief, dehydration isn't the biggest problem facing athletes. Overhydration is. Thanks to misguided hydration guidelines, you see lots of athletes overhydrate and dilute blood sodium levels, which can cause headaches, fatigue, muscle cramps, dizziness, and more. Enter Element. Element has enough sodium, potassium, and magnesium to help you feel and perform your best. Plus, it has zero sugar and artificial colors. I love the way Element tastes, and I love how it makes me feel. Have you tried the chocolate salt with coffee in the morning? Sometimes I'll go for a little spice with the mango chili flavor while watching the games in Paris. And now, Element has come up with a fantastic offer for us. Get your free 8-count sample pack with any Element purchase at drinkelement.com/recap. That's DRINKLMNT.com/recap. And be sure to try the new Element Sparkling, a bold 16-ounce can of sparkling electrolyte water. And the best part is, Element offers a no-question-asked refund. Try it totally risk-free. You have nothing to lose and only electrolytes to gain. Big thanks to Element. Now back to the recap show. That was the daily discussion. And now we're so excited to bring in Kara Nortman.
Kara Nortman is a dear friend, a mentor of Tobin and I's. She is one of the most amazing female venture capitalists. She co-founded Angel City. She co-founded the Monarch Collective, which invests in women's sports. And she is wild and fun and joining us soon.
Let's bring her in. We just introed her, and now she is here. Welcome, Kara Nortman.
Yay!
So happy to be here. Wow, that was like an octave higher than normal.
That's actually what happens in that seat. Kristen did a community question in this seat that will be remembered forever because I'm pretty sure gifts were made of it, where she did the same thing.
Well, I fancy myself an alta in the a cappella world.
Of course you do.
Well, we're already laughing, and that's about right for us when we get together. We wanted to start off with kind of the Angel City origin story, but more importantly, the Tiny Tobin story. So as we know, you are one of 3 co-founders of Angel City, but the kind of vision and inspiration started for Angel City was back in 2015. I know it was a long time ago, and a lot has happened since, but take us back to that moment, and maybe tell us a little bit more about it that we haven't heard.
Oh, wow. Well, Maybe one thing you haven't heard, my family used to go to games. It was like the thing we did growing up. And my brother and sister were both the soccer players, the football players. I know we call it football here, Tobin. And I was the basketball player. But we would take these family trips on occasion, and they were all in the stands for the 99 game. I was chained to a desk on Wall Street. But like we would do these things. And my husband, Jake, was just reminding me of this, that if it wasn't for my parents asking us to go and paying for that trip, I don't know if we would have gone. We had all
2015.
This is 2015.
Wow.
And I remember we stayed in this lovely hotel and it was July 4th weekend, right? In Canada. They don't celebrate. And I actually remember there being an all-you-can-eat buffet, which was really meaningful back then when you had a lot of kids and all you do is think about feeding them, right, at a certain age. I just remember going to this game, and there are all these pictures of me and my 3 girls, and my littlest one was 3, and my oldest one was whatever 3 plus 5 is, or maybe she was 2, 7. But they were little, and we walked into, and we all put on red, white, and blue. We walked into the stadium, and I just remember this woman offering to paint my girls' faces and mine, and it was just this like community feeling that I hadn't remember feeling in a long time. And I remember at the time the Rams were playing at the Coliseum, and I was like, this just feels like a different vibe. And so I think in a lot of ways, I was a 39-year-old working mom of 3 with my parents and my husband and my girls. And I just felt like this very naive or innocent joy. And then and I just wanted more of that. And it was just so much fun. You guys played so well. I think, what was the score? 5-1?
We really came out to play that game.
What was the score?
5-2.
5-2.
5-2.
But like you had like 3 goals in the first handful of minutes. So also you guys created a lot of stress watching in 2019. Yeah. But in 2015, there was no stress in that game.
It was just joy.
There was this little picture of my little one on the ground, no shirt on. She's 2 or 3 years old with empty beer things around her. We were not drinking, but people were like throwing things. And she literally looked like a 2-year-old football hooligan. She was like, and so it just, I think for me, I just was so joyful. I wanted more. And in a lot of ways, it reminded me of playing team sports. And I realized how much I missed that really unique environment, which you guys understand because you've both been in and out of it in different ways. And you don't really get that again in life. And I did find it again in Angel City in a way that I didn't know was possible as a grown up. So then the story goes, we'll give a shout out to Kling. My middle daughter wanted a Kling shirt. And I was just so proud to have one child that didn't want a Heath press on Bach, Morgan shirt that I was like, we got to get this girl a Defender shirt. We have raised her right. She knows there are other people who do work. And so I went I went to lots of stores in Vancouver, and I was like, my mind was blown. I found one football jersey, period. Yeah. And so anyway, now it's like, if you're American, when you're having fun, you want to spend money, right? And and then I came back and I tried to find content, and this is where Tiny Tobin comes in. Yes. So it was obviously really fun to watch you guys back then. And I have these pictures from the stands of both of you. And I wanted to go watch the Thorns because I had heard all about the Thorns. And so I'm watching, and it was on Yahoo streaming back then. Wow. And it looked like it was being streamed from outer space, like maybe from an asteroid on outer space, where Tobin was like, I call her Teeny Tobin. There's Teeny Tobin. And I'm like, this is unwatchable. Can we stream it on I tried really hard. Like I get pretty relentless about wanting to watch soccer.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And so I'm like, I cannot watch Tiny Tobin. Tiny Tobin does really cool things with her feet, and she's too tiny
to see them. I mean, I think this is like something that everybody needs to know and understand. Well, I might have been the first player signed for Angel City. Tiny Tobin was the inspiration because Kara just said, I have to make Tiny Tobin regular size Tobin so I can watch her play. And with that inspiration, you went on to create Angel City, which is now, the highest valued women's sports club in the world, which is so freaking cool. So thank you for that. But also thank you, Tobin, for being here in HD.
For being so tiny with many other people. But yeah, I mean, I think that the interesting thing about that is it got into my head. You have this huge moment where you have all these these people gathered, hundreds of millions of people, now a billion people watched the last Women's World Cup. And then, we call that a marketing activation event, right? Only 1% of people in the world ever probably see the Golden State Warriors play live.
Yeah.
It's the 99% though that can follow them and watch them and wear their jerseys all over the world. And so the analogy I make is it's like having a 90-minute Gatorade commercial. It's like the best Gatorade commercial you've ever seen. And then there's no Gatorade in the store for 4 years.
Yeah.
You have no idea. So when people would say nobody wants to watch women play football more than every 4 years, it's only you. I'm like, that just can't be right.
Yeah.
We don't know. Like, you might be right, you might be wrong, but we just don't know because it's so hard to find it and to watch it and to buy stuff. So that's where for sure it started for me. But then obviously Julie and Natalie and Alexis and all the other people who came into it played a major role.
But it's so cool because, I always think about the women's soccer community specifically, and it's kind of intangible. It's hard to explain what makes it so special, but you touched upon it in like walking in that stadium. But what I love is like the idea that you had this like welcoming from the women's soccer community, but somehow you then went out and created it. And now like Angel City, in my opinion, is like the driving force and the standard of what the women's sporting community can feel like. Like it's a cultural thing that you were able to recreate in a really, really powerful way.
Am I allowed to ask you guys a question?
Oh, please.
Okay.
Wow. Do people ask us questions?
Not often, but this is Kara.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I don't know that I've ever asked you guys this, but you guys remember when we first met, I think in 2018, for real, not like me, like, hey guys.
Yeah.
And I think, Kristen, I remember you using the word fanship. But to me, female athletes, and in particular soccer players, were always my heroes, and started with Mia and Abby and, Foudy and all of the, and then you guys were too, right? Like this kind of mutual role modeling thing that's grown up over time. How did you decide I wasn't crazy? Like, why did you choose to spend time with me? Because you have a lot of people who want to spend time with you.
We never decided that you weren't crazy. We were saying the exact same thing. You really said
that was what we call a layup.
Okay, can we get some compliments? Like high integrity crazy, idealistic crazy.
Well, we are also crazy.
Yeah. You know what? There's a couple of things. So people don't know this, but we actually met for the first time when we pitched Re-Inc to you when you were in venture capital at Upfront. And you were one of maybe the very first pitches. So we were very green. I think Tobin had a styrofoam board.
Yep.
We had so much energy. It was actually really fun. We remember that pitch very fondly. Do you remember the advice that you gave us right off the bat?
I have no memory.
We talk about it all the time.
Really?
And when you said, how did you decide that I wasn't crazy or that I was worth spending time with? Actually, the first piece of advice you gave us was we were with our co-founder, who is a man, and he introed us, and we were very much learning from him. Yeah. And he is a very successful entrepreneur. And you said, you should always introduce yourself first. And it was like for me, like a bridge was brought down because you were just so honest.
Yeah.
Like most people aren't going to say that. Most people are going to think that and then quietly write it down, knock on this pitch. You know what I mean? And you were like, oh, these people are young. They're trying to do something awesome. Let me just tell them something that's helpful. Yeah. We've never made that mistake again.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then, and I would also say your reputation, a woman in venture capitalism was just is a rock star. For us, it's kind of the equivalent of, what we were doing, being on the USWNT team, kind of doing the impossible, fighting for progress and equity by just being excellent.
Thank you.
And finding and fighting for your place. And that's kindred spirits. And now what, I go around calling the women's sports mafia, that's the essence of it.
Yeah. Okay, great. And you brought me back. So I got 1,000 flashes in my head. I mean, when I started in venture capital, I'm 23 in 1999. It really was different. And men were wearing tie necklaces. I'd go into meetings. There were you guys probably don't even know what that is.
No.
In Boston and the East Coast. But I just remember taking it back to us. I'll stay on track. Being so excited you guys were coming into the office. And I remember who introduced us. I don't know if you guys remember.
No.
It was Jess Lee at Sequoia.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Jess.
And she literally was like, you never stop talking about soccer. In the nicest, Jess wouldn't say it in that tone. She's like, there's a founding group. Do you want to meet them? And I'm like, hell's to the yes. And who knew we would be sitting here today? And you guys have truly been one of the greatest parts of the friendship journey and all the parts of it. So I'll wait to cry and get nostalgic later.
Well, I mean, I think since that moment, we've considered you a mentor, someone that we admire and respect, but also a friend. Mm-hmm. And we actually at that point did not know you were crazy. It wasn't until 2019 when you mysteriously popped up in every stadium. You know, we're playing in packed stadiums through the World Cup. You can't find your family. You can't find your own father. But somehow, every game, at the end of the game, there was this cuckoo lady who was jumping up and down and got my attention through every stage.
I'm pretty sure. Were you in the Friends and Family program? I mean,
I can see how that would seem a little strange. I do now think of myself sometimes. I'm like, I think I might be the Forrest Gump of women's football. Like, how did I end up there? Because they were all like, I always tell people, my schedule's a little bit crazy, but if I'm energized and you invite me to London or Vegas or something last minute and I can make it, I'm your girl. And I got a lot of those. Becca Rue. Becca Rue.
Right.
OG.
Yeah. Becca.
Becca.
Actually, I mean, no, this is not a story I've ever told, if you want this story.
Yes.
My brother was going through a pretty hard personal time right before the 2019 World Cup. I hadn't planned to go. Natalie and I had become friends. We were working on the pay equity fight with you guys and Becca, et cetera. She has friends with larger Instagram followings than me. My friends are cool. They build shit, but like, you know. Anyway, and then I remember I was at like my brother's house with my brother and my sister were all really close, my parents. And my sister was like, we should take him somewhere. Like, let's go on a sibling trip. It's still the only all sibling trip we have taken. Wow. And last minute, I'm like, let's go to World Cup. Becca keeps telling me she has tickets. And so last minute, like 3 weeks, 2 weeks beforehand, we decided to go to Normandy. And I do remember seeing you. And you're like looking for your dad. And Normandy has like a very heavy vibe.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah. I'm glad we're sitting here because I can see how that would look a little weird.
I mean, it's like synchro destiny though. Like we talk about this a lot. It's like for some reason, like you've been kind of like woven into the fabric of this like really big movement. And obviously your skill set like helped all of women's sports accelerate. Like, look what you've been able to accomplish with Angel City in such a short period of time and like what your next chapters are going to be. And that's what like I think about is like, you know, we kind of were like this fuel. The US Women's National Team, those back-to-back World Cups between 15 and 19 were just like this like injection of fuel. But it's kind of like it's not worth anything unless you have some vehicles to do something with. And we're coming up to another world championship. So if you think about like Angel City kind of being born out of 2015, out of 2019, as an owner of NWSL teams, as being part of this movement, like, is this a moment where collectively you're looking at what's next for the league, what's next for teams? Like, are you rooting for the US Women's National Team because it is such an important factor to kind of adding fuel to this movement? What does it feel like going into this Olympics? Yeah, it's a great question. I'm going to take us back for a second to go forward. Ooh, so nice. I think one thing that's important as we talk about the kind of craziness or of showing up all over the place is the authenticity of my interests and my joy and finding something that felt instinctually. I trusted my instincts on like, I just wanted to go. I wanted to have fun. I wanted to share with people I loved. Natalie, my siblings, etc. And it was a thing, an interest, a curiosity that I was sort of like relentlessly curious about. And people talk about curiosity all the time. And I have tons of curiosities. You guys do too. We were just talking about, I was on a Southwest flight curious about bodybuilding. It's gone. It's disappeared. But that one stuck around. And so it was this joyful curiosity that also bugged me. It bothered me. And it just didn't make sense. And the authenticity of not needing that to be a thing. When I started thinking about it or asking questions or running around 2015, it wasn't because I wanted to start a team. It was Natalie who put that idea in my head. And then when Julie came in where it really started, it was really like something though that was out there as a side hustle interest that didn't need to be anything. And so I tell people all the time, look for that.
don't turn it into a job. Like find your joy on the side that you don't need to make money for. Like we need to train women to ask for what they deserve and make money, but also like passions and hobbies and new things like that pop up all the time. Like, like new things like that pop up all the time. And I pay attention to what sticks around and doesn't need to go anywhere. And so it is now my job. So it's different and I love it. And I do feel like if you want to talk about it, understanding what authenticity looks like as people are rushing in is something I spend a lot of time thinking about. Because when you have a goal, you get focused on that goal, whether it's changing systems, making money, et cetera. And so my outlook on the Olympics and the U.S. women's team, I felt when I was sitting at the Spain game in Hram. I don't know how to say it. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, no idea.
I felt this energy, and I don't know if you guys remember that game, but it was the quarterfinals of like, this team needs to win for so much more than, I'm going to cry. Like this team needs to win because everything I believe in the world, I think is going to come out of all of these players. And Becca, someday when she decides to actually speak publicly in a more significant way, talking, and Molly and all the people, like all of these people talking about like why this work is so much more important than just scoring goals and what happens on the field. I don't feel that way anymore. I feel like that needed to happen to give the all of you the stage to do this. What everyone on that team has done, how they've been changed, how they'll continue to change, how I've been changed. I don't know if there'd be an Angel City if you guys didn't win.
Yeah.
Like, we'll never know.
Yeah.
So I love watching soccer. I love watching football, which is weird because I played basketball. I love basketball too, but it's what spoke to me. So it's hard when the U.S. doesn't win because I love winning. But I think I look at it more in like this is like for life to go on, every country needs this and the whole sport needs to elevate. And there are all these historical cycles that we're all going to live through. And how do we be the best version of ourselves right now? And then wake up tomorrow and do it again and again and again. And I'm sure we'll be having this conversation in 2050. I hope.
Well, it's so interesting because I love that perspective. Unfortunately, I don't think Tobin and I can share it because we're just like, it's our team, it's our legacy, we gotta win.
Come on, Mal's gonna score a bunch, right?
Right. But,
that's what we're going for.
Yeah, but I do think that there's, from my rational side of my brain, there is something really important about the investment and the excitement that's globally happening in football. And it does have a hugely positive impact on the US in a long-term situation. When you were like, you kind of talk about feeling the passion, right? And saying like, this is something that I'm doing on the side. And then you see the business opportunity from the perspective of like the business of women's sports. Did you have a thing or a few things that you were like, if we can get this right, it's going to go boom? Can you share that with us?
Yeah, there was one thing. There was one thing I got really clearly focused on. People kept telling me things like, women, and it is important, right? Like just to put it in context, we know these stats, but I'll do it. Again, $1.3 billion in the last reported data, global women's sports market. That's all revenue. It's higher now with the new media deals, et cetera, coming out, but let's $1.5 billion, $2 billion, whatever it might be. The men's side is $500 billion, right? So you're a fraction of a percent of total market.
Yeah.
I always love to say there's an arbitrage on sexism. Know where you show up, know where you can add value and plug in and work collaboratively because there's a role for all of us to play with a degree of like self-awareness and knowing what you're good at and what you're not good at. So I think that's a really important stat. What was the question?
The one thing that's going to make women's sports go boom.
Yeah.
So, it's happened and it's going to continue to happen. And it shouldn't be a surprise when you have a Caitlin Clark come along anymore, because like you need these moments, you need these change agents, you need these messiahs to new populations, butts in seats. And that was the one thing when we were trying to like figure out how to get funding for Angel City, and everyone kept telling me things like, women's sports isn't going to work because you're never going to get a media slot. And that's where all the high margin revenue is. And I'm like, okay, well, I go one step before that. Why aren't women's sports going to get a slot? And they're like, well, you know, and then one step before that and one step before that. And it was like, and then people are like, well, another professional sports team in LA is never going to work. You have 11 teams, you have USC and UCLA, you know, people love the beach, the mountains, like people in LA are fickle. It's never going to work. Now I get asked, does it only work because it's LA? And I'm like, come on, guys. So we found one data point that, and people like, it was super helpful, which was the LA Soul. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, of course.
So they played for one season. And they had 10,000, on average, 10,000 tickets sold per game. We built our whole model off of roughly that number. And we convinced people that we could get to break even or better off of 10,000 and that would be the beginning of unlocking all these other revenue streams, sponsors, partners, media revenue. But that's where it started. Yep. That was the venture capital lever, you know? Yeah. And I still think it's butts in seats. Like when people talk about Newcastle women selling out the stadium and they're a 4th division team. Yep. I still look for, like, everyone has all the data, right? Triple the viewership in the W. Everyone's discovering women's basketball for the first time. The WNBA is the longest standing league. They were packing stadiums 25 years ago, but it's amazing. We welcome them. Yeah. It is like the places where people show up and surprise people and then they have an amazing experience. Yeah. And it's getting people into that experience. I always invite skeptics to Angel City games. Yeah. I can tell if there's
us too. We do the same exact thing.
Yeah, just come sit with me. Yeah. See what it feels like. See how different it feels. So that's the one thing.
I love that.
And oh, by the way, just to give a shout out to my co-founders, which I like to do. Women celebrating women. There's so many to celebrate. I went back and looked at our first pitch deck recently.
That's awesome.
And we generated 4x the amount of revenue in our first year out relative to the number we put in there. Because we didn't put a lot of other data in around sponsorships and like we had some, but we surpassed even our expectations of where we'd get to. But that was the stat that I think we really leaned into. And that was the thing we were focused on, getting you guys paid, right? That's what motivated us initially. Butts in seats and showing that you could put on the best show on earth to watch the best soccer players in the world who happen to be women. And then that a women's professional football team could be worth as much as Liverpool or the, you know, Yankees or the Warriors someday, and to generate the respect that the game deserves.
And now for everybody's favorite segment, community questions, that Tobin, just before this started, said, can't wait to roast you. For C to Ask T, Ashley from Massachusetts asks, since we heard Christen's side, what was Tobin's first impression of Christen?
Oh, wow. Wow.
Weren't ready for that one. I'm roasting you.
I thought you were a little bit of a mystery.
Do you all see the shyness on her face? Are you being bashful?
Maybe. Yeah, I felt like you were like a little detached from the group. And I think I was like a little curious to who you were, because it wasn't like there's so many like big personalities on the team, and they just kind of like it's all out there. But like for you, like the way that you came onto the team, I feel like was very like kind of under the radar. And I think I was very curious. I was like, who is this chick? Okay, well, I was hoping that the questions would really allow me to roast you, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case today. Thank you for the very positive questions. For T to Ask C, Lacey from Texas wants to know, what is your favorite fictional series to read or watch right now? Because we all know how much you like to tell us about your favorite things.
She wrote that?
No.
Oh. I was like, oh, okay. But you added that?
Yeah.
Lacey, I don't have a brain that understands superlatives. So if you want to hear a fictional series that I like Throne of Glass.
There was recently a funny video of you referencing it.
Yes, because I love the main character, Selena. She will not be.
What do you like about the series?
Well, it was actually my first fantasy series that I ever read. Well, since I was like a kid. Right?
Oh my gosh, and this is the Olympic episode, and this was your Olympic series.
Yes, in the Olympics, everyone was quarantined and isolated and sad, and I was having the time of my life reading this book. And everyone's like, "This is so hard," and I was like, "No, I just like I'm not even here. I'm not in Tokyo. I am like in a land far away, like fighting dragons." But it's a very good book. I don't want to give too much away, so if you haven't read it, spoiler alert. But the thing that I like about it is that it's a romance, but it continuously plot twists so that the main character has multiple romances and they keep getting steamier and steamier. And you know how you like cheer for someone to be together and then you find yourself mad that they aren't together, but then you're even happier about the next one.
Wow.
And then the twists and the turns and the romance, it just takes you on a journey.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. Proceed to Ask T. Megan from Portland, Maine asks, our favorite place, Portland, Maine. Is there anything that you wish you did differently in your journey from a young player into college and then the pros? Was your college program choice the right one for you?
I have zero regrets whatsoever.
In life?
If anything, I would just want to do it again. And like I feel very lucky to be able to say that because I just was kind of like born into like a soccer hotbed. I had incredible coaches. I had incredible environments. I knew what I wanted to do, and like I was given like a lot of tools to be able to do them. And I actually reference my development a lot when I think of like the next generation and the experience I had and wanting to kind of give back those experiences because they were so honestly, they were so beneficial to my development as a player for like the future of becoming like a professional and all these types of things. I really take a lot of learnings in that. So I would do it again exactly the same times 10.
Well, I know Megan didn't ask me, but you couldn't pay me enough. There's nothing in the world that could get me to go back to adolescence, and I just don't understand how you could say that.
I don't know.
Well, you're a kid at heart, so I guess you liked it when you were physically in a child's body.
But even in my adult mind now, I like it.
I know.
That's I think it's rare, and I feel really lucky. Anyways, not to get all sentimental. For T to Ask C, Angela from Maryland asks, what has been inspiring you lately?
Ooh.
Great question.
My home.
Angela from Maryland. Oh.
My home. Oh my gosh. So being an athlete, you're just a nomad, and I was not meant to be a nomad. You also live like with your team, and I was not meant for communal housing. I was not meant for hotel life. I was not meant for buffets. Oh, God. That we know for sure. Those are the sacrifices that I made to be a soccer player. And now I get to be a soccer player, and I get to live in a home. And it's my home, and I'm obsessed with it. And every single day that I come home, I feel inspired. And it makes me like to be able to take care of things. So actually related, Tobin and I were learning about like land and how we have as humans these like weird ideas that we own land and we own this home. So I try not to think of it as this home that I own. I think of it as this land that I get to take care of for a period, and someone will come after me and take care of it. And we don't have a lot of land. We live in LA, so we have a very little amount of land, but it is the land that we take care of, and that's what I love about it. And just like a little bit of insight, because like I'm on a rant right now, we have a camera in the house, and so when I was away on an away trip, I like to like see what's going on in the house. And in just an example of how we take care of our home. Yesterday, I see Tobin out there with like a rag and like a broomstick just scrubbing the exterior of our home. I was like, what are you doing?
She's such a creep with all these cameras.
But I do like to know what's going on in my home.
I do love taking care of them.
And we take care of it, and we have plant babies, and it's inspiring
thriving.
thing.
It's thriving.
All right. Well, thank you all for your questions. As always, if you want to get your question on the show, you can join our membership. Our members are amazing. They are sports fans and change makers from all over the world that come together to watch sports, to take care of each other. It's a beautiful community. And within that membership, you can submit your questions, and we answer questions every single week on the show. So thank you to all of our members for being wonderful reimaginers alongside Tobin and I.
I saw some interesting things recently that just kind of like triggered me a little bit, because we've been fighting for this idea in things that have been completely overlooked and underinvested in for a long time. Like, we truly believe like you need overinvestment in those areas, and women's sports is very much in that category. Angel City does $0 to $30 million, before year 2, valued at around $200 million now, which incredible. Only 3 years or something. I do not
talk valuations.
We don't talk valuations, according to sources. For us, there's still criticism. There will always be criticism, especially when women are succeeding with the types of valuations like that. But for somebody to say like, oh well, they're losing money, or they've spent too much money to get there, there is a trigger in me, and I think I have to like kind of contain this, where I become very frustrated at that. Because I believe that the success of women's sports at large will come from overinvestment, especially at these early stages. And that's what sets you up for the valuation in 3 years of that. If you don't spend the money, you never get there anywhere close. And I think to continue that trajectory to be the first $1 billion club in the NWSL, like, more investment has to be made. When you kind of get the criticism, which you obviously get like the accolades with the criticism at the same time, what is your kind of like, especially from your perspective as a venture capital, when you're talking about long-term, like changing generational wealth and things like that, like what is your perspective when you hear those types of things?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's really hard to have conversations in sound bites, which you guys know as well. And so I think this is a really good topic. And so with, I've been on lots of boards, invested in lots of companies over time. And I guess what I would say is I'm not triggered by it, because I think friction is important. And I think having perspectives around the table, how much cash is the right amount of cash to burn, and where are you putting it? And do you have a growth P&L that drives revenue? And if you're not driving an ROI in revenue, like, how is it foundational or fundamental to this team? And how is it the same or different than a tech company or venture capital? Like, I'll give you like a really easy example, but like anytime I really try to get strong finance people in behind visionaries, quickly. Yeah. And I take that stuff seriously. And as the co-founder who was both operating and operational in my career, but also in the investor, I felt a lot of this weight myself in our relationships. And Julie and Natalie can tell you, we had a lot of debate around this. You kind of like, I always tell people, like, overhire on the finance and the CFO side. And you want at the right time, like not at the wrong time. Like if you don't know if it's working, great. But once you know it's working, you want someone who's going to kind of like mildly irritate you if they're a CFO. Like you want someone who brings friction. You want that person. You have that in a relationship, right? You have one person who likes to spend more and you have one person who likes to spend less. Which one is it?
Can you guess?
Yeah, can you?
Oh, this is a tough one.
I know.
Think about our Enneagrams.
Okay, now it's easy. Tobin likes to spend. Christen doesn't like to spend. That's all. You gave me a clue.
I know.
So anyway, that friction and that debate is really important because there are no right answers.
Yeah.
I do think the important thing to say though, and this is frustrating when it gets out there, is you both need funding that's usually beyond what people think. But too much funding can also like cover up things and make things like not sensible or smart. And so it is a Goldilocks kind of dynamic. And you want to go through that. You want to have debate. You want to have boards. Like even in teams, we obviously like we're unusual in how we started, but I get to be involved in many different teams and organizations now through Monarch. And you have very traditional, structures around the table, but we still try to create normative advisors and boards where you empower them to have a different set of opinions. Because I think the thing that made Angel City was it was the first place you truly had cognitive diversity and representation around the table. And we use identity as like a kind of a litmus test for like cognitive. And it can always get better and you're going to always make mistakes. But we challenged a lot of assumptions that everybody was happy to challenge, right? Like, how do you construct it? Do you pay players for doing what we call affiliate marketing in tech, right? Like 1% of gate fee goes to players up to a cap that's in the salary cap. That was like a pretty controversial thing. But I mean, like we introduced marketing, things like that. So anyway, I think it's both helpful for it to be triggering when it should be triggering, but also to understand that too much capital put in the wrong way or the wrong, that doesn't always yield results, and to have debate.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's so great, I think, actually something that Tobin always says is like the beauty that comes within the tension. So talking about kind of like embracing the friction, it's almost like the tension. Like if you're not getting pulled in both directions, like you can't grow, right? And so like that healthy cognitive diversity and like differing perspectives is actually allowing you to push into new territories for the first time. That's sort of how I like physically see it.
And like, I'm sure, I don't know if you guys experience it, but this analogy that I got from my executive coach, and as you guys know, I love being coached and getting therapy and self-improving. But, and those, is sort of this idea of above the line, below the line. And it's a very simple litmus test of when you get feedback, are you feeling defensive or are you feeling curious? And it happens in marriage, it happens with children, it happens in friendship, and it happens in business because we all want to be seen.
Yeah.
And so it's like when that happens, and I practice this all the time in my marriage, I practice it with Julie and Natalie, Julie and Natalie we did coaching around this because our partnership, the three of us sticking together through ups and downs has been meaningful. It's like, how do you like get yourself out of the lizard brain so you can be curious? Because there's almost always something to be curious about. And then in partnerships that I foster now, I look for people who want to do the same thing. When did I change your mind? When did you change my mind? And you look at the actions, not the words.
Yeah.
You look at the actions, and you can only know that over periods of time. And so one other thing I'd say, as we're getting into this moment in women's sports, really understanding what are people's values? How do they show up, when no one's looking? Yeah. What do they do when they're feeling afraid and defensive and in threat? Because we all feel that way. And in sports, I think we feel that way more often than even tech, which has been surprising.
Yeah.
You know what? So I kind of want to, everyone can see now why we love talking to you and how much you teach us and what an awesome friend and mentor you are. But I kind of want to talk a little bit about Kara the person, Kara the butterfly. And I'm jamming this into this interview because it's really important to me because this is actually where I think you and I relate the most. I really obviously admire all the success that you've had, right? I see myself as an entrepreneur and a future business person, and an entrepreneur, and in the future, also an entrepreneur. Okay, didn't make sense.
Perfect.
But I think what I've found so compelling about you is the way that this experience in women's sports has transformed you. And when I think of the butterfly, I think of the caterpillar, and I think of that's you, in your investment role, and something happened and you cocooned and you've gone through this very spiritual journey of rediscovering yourself and your passion and your relationships. And you've learned about the Enneagram, and actually Kara is the one who taught us about the Enneagram.
Yes, that's my biggest claim to fame. When I see Kristen with an Enneagram book on Instagram, my whole world lights up. I'm so happy because I think it took like 5 or 6 conversations.
It really did.
You're like, oh my God, she's talking about the Enneagram again.
But then now I'm in. But I want you to share a little bit, if you will, about what kind of made you start on this path where you're super successful, right? And you're sort of taking a big risk and saying, I'm going to give this thing up that I'm very, very good at, and I'm going to apply it in this new way and start at the beginning.
You guys are going to make me cry. I'm in like a crying mode today. I couldn't have expected to go on the journey I've been on. And it's been, I think what I'm into right now is binary and polarity. And I feel the power of the polarity and the resistance to binary, and just understanding that, that we all kind of go heavy on one thing versus another, whether it's the stories in our head and other people have different ones, or what our ego or identity are tied to, or like the idealism of how you want the world to see. And then you need somebody to pull you out of them. it's Byron Katie work. I can, but I'll make this kind of more accessible. I think when I started just finding the joy in gathering with other women and men to talk about something that I felt like changed hearts and minds in a way that nothing in my life could, I just wanted to spend more and more time doing that. And I had to leave an identity behind. I had to leave this identity of doing this job in tech as the breadwinner of my family, of doing all these things behind for this thing that I just thought was a passion. And I started doing coaching because I took it really seriously. And what I did was I started pulling this thread that unraveled, that just kept unraveling, and looking for new tools to understand myself in marriage, in business, with Julie and Natalie, with my partners at Upfront, and like, who are you when you go to the white screen of you have no name? Yeah. You aren't Kristen, you aren't Tobin, you aren't Kara. But what is it you wake up and want to do? And how do you make people feel seen and felt? And I do think, I still don't have, I've been working on this with my coach for a long time, like a perfect explanation of my life purpose. I'm working on it, but I think it is connection. It is around connection and community, and surprising people through connection and community. And I feel like women's sports was purpose built for that. It can't just live on Twitter. It doesn't just live on your television. And you get these moments in time where you are essentially like in prayer, in a spiritual moment, where you just feel the most base human emotions, and where Republicans and Democrats sit next to each other and find commonality and togetherness. And so I've become extremely thoughtful and disciplined, or I think I am, in how I talk about controversial things now, because I just want to bring people together. And there's a lot of people who can talk about controversial things. And then the whole spiritual journey thing, as you guys know, it's the Enneagram I found incredibly valuable and confusing at times. But tools like Enneagram, tools like coaching, tools like the Hoffman Institute, tools like even, like group YPO sessions or therapy. I think group therapy, there's a book called Group. Have you guys read that one? It's a narrative nonfiction book. It's so good. A fiction book that's similar, of like stories not being told, is in The Dark of Night. But those are my two like weirdly spiritual, got something out of them books. But I find that to be the most fun part of life. And I view everything as practice now. And something happened this morning, and I was like deeply below the line, defensive, in ego, felt in threat. And I have this good fortune of scaring the what can I say? I have this good fortune of, once I decided to quit tech and my job and take my earnings down to zero and do all these things, it was mildly alarming to my romantic partner.
You're dead. It's funny.
We'll get Jake on for the next show. My Iron Man, wonderful coaching. What I've learned in partnership with him teaches me a lot. But he got scared too. And then he started doing the same work I was doing. And he now uses this analogy. He says, we're two pencils in a rubber band. And that I'm often going ahead, but sometimes, by the way, now he's going ahead, and it creates tension in the rubber band, but we give the other one time to catch up. And there's a lot of flex in that rubber band.
I love that.
And I think having a mirror where you can actually practice and challenge yourself. And so this morning he said, why are you in threat? Did you do this? No. Okay. How can you learn from this? How can you show up thoughtfully and just move through this? Like, who you are, how could you see the other perspective? So I get coached he is now actually a coach, but I get coached every day in this. And I think it is what will change the world. You guys doing the work, me doing the work, getting more and more management teams. So I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 years there's an Enneagram coaching practice that I've helped launch with people who I really respect and value. And I'm just collecting those people and learning from them. Because I think it's the way to change the world, is like to show up and be a lot less afraid and collaborate with people who show up and are dependable and creative, and look for joy.
I love the story of you being one of the few successful women in a male-dominated space and venture, being open to the call, being open to the universe when they're speaking to you, seeing the business opportunity, being brave enough to give up what you have, winning, being super successful, but then the actual benefit of that, of course, Angel City is amazing, but your life went on a whole new trajectory of transformation because you were open and you were listening to what the world was giving you. And it's so brave and kudos to you. And we have to talk about the sale and Angel City and today's moment.
I thought we were going to do an Enneagram typing session. No, okay, all right.
No, but I mean, obviously, it's been a huge week. It's a huge week for me as a player, a huge week for you. We've put all your blood, sweat, and tears into this, and I know the deal is still evolving and finishing, but wanted to hear from you. What do you think this means? What can the fans expect? What's the next phase going to look like for Angel City?
Yeah, listen, I think you should expect more of the same and listening and learning and building. It's not unlike what happened. Like, we were the first team to do the thing we did in our way. And of course, we learned deeply from the Thorns, right? Like, that's where you started. And, that's the team we went to visit. And the first place we saw a packed stadium. So it's like, what has Angel City done? It's packed stadium plus business. And it's, sponsorship models and community building and all of that sort of stuff. So I think what you, in a venture capital analogy, which is kind of how this started, you have your seed round and your Series A and your growth round. And it's sort of like at each phase, I think everyone around the table is like, switches gears and is like, okay, what got us here is probably not going to take us there. So how do we think about where capital should go, what you build, what is purely a cost versus a revenue? I know this is the boring stuff, but this is the most important work that I think almost everyone around the table has done. Everyone around the table is a meaningful part of this going, forward in every way, shape, and form. And it's bringing in some of the most extraordinary people around to be our new partner. Somebody who knows a lot about communicating, Willow Bay, who I've just gotten all these texts and emails since we announced with people telling me that. And she's a very understated person. And so I also just we are in process right now. And I just want to be respectful. You guys can bring me in later on. But who've said she's one of the most selfless mentors I've ever had. And I just keep having people come up and tell me what she has done to support them. And then, of course, she's great at communication. And then, Bob Iger runs the biggest, most successful media company in the world, knows a ton about media and media rights. It'll be great for the league. Yes. It's great for all of us. So I think it is important, and I'll give a shout out. We talked about my founders, but David Nathanson, Brian Weinstein, Alexis Ohanian, Chris Frank, Jillian Berry. So many people have worked tirelessly behind the scenes, and all those people will continue to be big supporters. And then it's also important to say, we have to allow people to make mistakes everywhere. Yeah. When you're doing something for the first time, and we've all made them, and it's just we will, as long as we learn and grow from them, things will get better and better. And then I will say, I think Julie and I care deeply about open sourcing. And it's something I've taught, Michelle Kang, Angie and Chris Long.
What's open sourcing?
Oh, sharing information.
It's different in women's sports than men's sports. And I think there is this it is hard to get out of scarcity mentality. You guys know this. The zero sum, the stuff that Abby talked about in Wolfpack. We've all been trained for that. We've all been trained to attach your ego to this, and we all do it. Yeah. But one of the things that's been so different about Angel City, and this will not change, Julie will continue to lead the team. She and I and Natalie, if people come to us and ask for help, and I'm sure this is true of Chris and Alexis and Brian and everyone, we'll tell them whatever they need. We'll introduce them to the team. We'll introduce them to Becca. We'll help them build their model, and so it's we need to raise all ships, and sometimes it's hard. Yeah. But that's what's most important, that we all keep doing that for the ecosystem. And then we got to stick our head down and execute. We got to get you on the pitch, CP23.
Coming soon.
But I mean, there's a lot to do still, in this organization and in women's soccer, and leaning into what makes Angel City, but also continuing to improve and get better at the things we haven't been as good at. Those are going to be important. Listening to supporters, but supporters also they're our lifeblood. And we have lived through everything with this team. COVID, Black Lives Matter, Silicon Valley Bank, you name it, we've lived through it, and more is going to come, and that should just make us stronger.
Yeah, when I saw the news, immediately more investment into women's sports, amazing. Having, Bob Iger and Willow Bay be a part of this. For me, it was like a massive like indication, that the CEO of the Disney company is saying that with his personal money, with their personal money, that they are invested in women's sports.
Yeah.
Like that signal to the world
It's massive.
is powerful.
It's super authentic to them too, right? They're lifelong sports fans. Willow used to be involved in calling, like in reporting on the NBA. So you have two really authentic people.
Yeah.
Right. And so 100%. And it's been a journey, I'm sure, for them to and I think it's really validating for the world and the market and to create a ripple effect. Yeah. And so I do think this is a really special moment for everyone involved. And I hope every single person from, every player on the field, everyone feels so proud, because it's what made Angel City, Angel City. It was you guys, it's the Rojas's and the supporters and the Ponderosa. I mean, it's every single person. I walked around the Fan Fest before Pride, which is like my favorite game. Like it really is.
Best Pride party in Los Angeles. Angel City match.
Just walk around.
Every week.
Walk around. Have you guys ever gotten to walk Fan Fest? I mean, I know you guys are getting mobbed, but it also
I have done it. I was escorted.
Yeah. You have done Fan Fest.
I have done it because I speak at Fan Fest sometimes.
It's like, if you ever want me to be your bodyguard,
you can escort me.
Well, it makes it really real. Like when you go and you eat tacos and you go to the booths and you sit down and you also get feedback. You get feedback, like what isn't working. Every single time someone comes up and tells me what's not working.
Yeah.
And I try to honor like organizational lines and report it to Julie or Kat or but you get both, but it feels so real, and you remember why it is, we're all doing this. It's like, that's my favorite part, the Fan Fest, and then going in before you guys play. And then it is like, CP, put it in the goal. Where's the magic?
This is like kind of the perfect culmination of so much of your personal hard work and the collective work of, the architects of the women's sports world. There's been so much growth in this period that you have dedicated to women's sports and women's soccer. So huge congratulations. I'm so excited to see what's next for you, for Angel City, all things hopefully trending up. And thank you for being here today.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you for inspiring me to quit my job and start Monarch. In addition to Angel City, thank you guys for being my friends and for teaching me.
Thanks for building with us.
More to come.
More to come.
So, because this is the Olympic edition, we are going to end each episode with a match that I'm really excited to watch. This is the Paris prediction. All eyes will be on the U.S. Women's National Team's first game against Zambia, but my eyes will actually be on the game that is Spain versus Japan. Everyone should recall this matchup from the last World Cup where Japan thrashed the world champions 4-0. It absolutely sent a shockwave through the world of football because Japan used a counterattacking style against the world champions. It really shocked the whole world of football and especially the future world champions. My prediction for this matchup is that Spain will be a little hesitant. Therefore, I don't think they're going to give up many goals, if any. I'm going to go with Spain 1-0. Want more of the recap show? Never miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.